I didn't trust numbers because I loved the analytical side of it. I trusted them because they didn't talk back to me. Numbers never flinched when a room went super quiet, and they didn't care about tone or history or how something landed on a really tired nervous system. They didn't ask follow-up questions or remember things that I wish that I'd said differently later that night or that week. When leadership got uncomfortable, I could disappear into a spreadsheet and come back with an answer that sounded final and confident. That kind of felt like maturity, but it was actually avoidance with just better branding. For a long time, I told myself that I was growing. This is what growth looked like. I thought I had evolved past emotional leadership into something cleaner and more professional, and that's what I wanted. Numbers felt like adulthood, and people, they felt immature and unpredictable. And without ever saying it out loud, I decided that unpredictable meant inefficient. Now here's the part that I just did not understand yet. Numbers don't remove pressure, they just relocate it. They push it out of the meeting and into your body. They delay the reckoning, but they never cancel it. Eventually, you find yourself staring at data that says, everything's fine, while something inside you knows it isn't. So when that happens, numbers don't argue with you. They just sit there, quietly useless. What surprised me wasn't that the numbers failed. It was how long they kept working after they stopped telling the whole truth. They stayed polite, they stayed clean, they kept agreeing with me while something underneath all of it was eroding. And because nothing was technically wrong, I had no external reason to just stop trusting them. That's the danger. You don't abandon numbers when they break. You abandon them when they stop being enough. That moment didn't come with fireworks for me. I was alone. No crisis, no angry emails, no red flag on a dashboard, just a growing awareness that we weren't serving people the way that we could have or should have. The numbers answered the question they were designed to answer, and they answered them cleanly and accurately. They had nothing to say about the ones that actually truly mattered and moved the needle. So I did what I had always done. I went looking for a solution. I searched for frameworks, ideas, systems that could explain what I was feeling and then tell me the next step to fix it. Most of what I found was about optimization and performance, and all assumed that the problem was external from me. None of what I found spoke to what happens when leadership outgrows the tools that once made it feel manageable. That was one of the first times that I realized I wasn't dealing with a numbers problem. I was dealing with an identity problem. Control had been trained into me long before I ever named it, long before I was a business owner. This didn't feel like control. It felt like being responsible. It felt like taking things seriously. It felt like doing my job well. And then control became the default response to complexity because it's always been rewarded for me. What control slowly took from me, though, wasn't effectiveness. It took range. My patience thinned without me noticing right away. Curiosity started to feel like a luxury I didn't have time for. And joy became something that I assumed that I'd just get back in a whole bunch later, right? Relationships carried the weight of management instead of trust. Control didn't collapse results. It narrowed the space where leadership could actually grow. I saw this play out really clearly during a large 4-day event that Megan and I were asked to help organize for a group of young people. The structure was very detailed and the logistics were way complex. And the familiar voice in the back of my head told me to oversee every part of it. That voice wasn't malicious, it was trained in how to do things. What became obvious very quickly was that the committees that were involved didn't really need supervision. They needed freedom. And the more I tried to manage the details, the heavier everything became. When I stepped back, the event didn't fall apart. It came alive. It became meaningful because capable people were trusted to lead. Letting go did not mean disengaging. Let me be clear. It meant shifting from managing outcomes to just being present. And that shift allowed Megan and I to focus on the emotional and spiritual heart of the experience instead of the logistics. Now, watching that happen rewired something in me that numbers had never been able to. Around that same period, I started noticing a different shift in how I led. And I didn't announce it in any super dramatic way. I had always been very quick to defend my perspective, partly because experience had trained me to trust it, and partly because being right felt safer than being open. What changed wasn't my confidence. It was my timing. So I began slowing down my responses just enough to hear what was actually happening in the room, including my own reactions. And that space altered conversations in ways that I didn't really expect. People stayed engaged way longer. Tension didn't spike nearly as fast, and decisions started carrying more weight because they weren't rushed into existence. This is where Wavemaker leadership actually begins. Not with bold statements or visible moves, but inside, when a leader stopped using certainty as armor and starts paying attention to what they're avoiding. When I loosened my grip on numbers as the ultimate authority, I was pretty afraid of exposure. That was a vulnerable space for me. Numbers had buffered me from accountability in ways that I really hadn't fully acknowledged, and they also got me in trouble sometimes. But without them, I worried that I would lose clarity or respect. And what actually happened was harder at first, but far better in the long run. Facing things directly also carries weight, because avoiding them doesn't remove that weight, it just delays it. Meeting accountability with courage changed how I led and really how I lived. This is the heart of beyond the numbers. Listen, numbers matter. They always will. They are powerful, powerful tools. What they are not is a home for leadership. When leaders live there, they shrink their influence to what can be measured and miss what can be transformed. And the work that creates real change happens in places where numbers can't quite reach. It's in relationships, it's in self-awareness, it's in the willingness to admit that being the right one isn't the same as being the real one. Wavemaker exists because leadership doesn't end with structures or metrics. It continues with identity. It asks you who you are becoming as you lead. And it starts with a small internal ripple that eventually shapes culture, community, and impact far beyond what any spreadsheet can capture. If you felt restless lately, even bored, despite doing all of the right things, it's not a failure. It's a signal. It might be pointing you beyond the numbers toward the part of leadership that actually changes lives. You don't have to abandon numbers. In fact, please don't. You just have to stop using them as shelter. The wave that you're meant to create starts somewhere way deeper.